FB04 Ultra Limit is upon us, and it's been a few weeks since we've had the entirety of the set revealed. With that in mind, I've looked through the entirety of the card database to find the 10 best cards in FB04. There are, however, a couple of honorable mentions that I just want to get out of the way, cards that are notable and good, but don't necessarily have the biggest impact in terms of what we're going to likely see in the meta. Kicking it off, we have a Warm Greeting. It's a 2-cost green card, activate main, draw 1 card, then choose up to 1 card with a cost of 4 or less in your opponent's battle area and add it to the owner's energy in rest mode. Now, removal is something that's really tough to come by in green, at least on the bottom end. And that's the biggest thing. If you've played any number of set 3 format, you'll know that as a green player, having to face off against the black decks that are able to get a turn 3 SS4 secret rare on the board can be really, really tough. So having that cheap removal that's able to replace itself and put you in a position to be able to play that mid game a little bit better is really nice. However, there is the fact that you're ramping your opponent because of it, and all non-green colors really get a huge boon if you're able to ramp them earlier in the game. The difference between being on 3 energy and 5 energy in a non-green deck is massive, and the power level of the cards that they're able to get out are really big. So while it's a necessary evil because of the number of 4 drops that you kind of have to deal with, this also deals with Jiren, for example, it can put you in a really tough position if the opponent has the powerful cards in hand to kind of amount to come back for it. Nevertheless, though, it is a perfectly viable card. Shifting on over to yellow, and this isn't really saying much, but the reason this is here is I have to give yellow a bit of a bone, given that it feels like yellow didn't get a ton to work with. The entirety of the Boo archetype is like fine, but overall is really hard to pinpoint anything that's overtly powerful compared to what a lot of the other colors got. Here we have 1-drop Bibbidi, 5-drop a 5k on a play. Look at the top 5 cards on the top of your deck and reveal 1 card with a cost of 4 or less and Majin in its special traits and add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom. So a Majin Buu Searcher, who cares? What's the big deal? Well, in yellow specifically, once we get the release of set 4, a lot of your best cards will be Majin Buu cards. Not only is the entire archetype a Majin Buu archetype, but additionally things like 3-drop Barrier Buu or the Buu that forces your opponent to discard cards. There's just a number of cards within the Boos that are really probably the best things that yellow is trying to do, and as such, a searcher for those cards is very much welcome. Those few memorable mentions aside, though, let's go ahead and take a look at our top 10. And for what it's worth, these aren't in any particular order. It's kind of hard to be able to gauge how good these 10 best cards are going to be when it's really in relation to the meta. And personally, I want to dig my teeth into the meta a little bit more before I give you guys my perspectives in terms of what I think the best strategies alongside the best cards in those strategies are going to be. I will try my best to be able to get those out before finals. That's like next week. But nevertheless, this is just, hey, these are some of the best cards, things that you'll want to look out for, not only during your pre-release, but additionally in the next couple of weeks as you're playing in tournaments and getting ready for finals. To kick it off, and we're just going to go with set order from here, 6-drop Jiren. Card is like absurdly good. 40k 0 combo, which is tough, but permanent. This card can't be removed from your battle area by your opponent's skills. So it's a 40k and it can't be removed. Realistically, it's going to stay there the entire game once it comes down, which is really, really rough, especially in combination with not only Jiren, which obviously gets a huge boon by having a card like this out on the board, meaning that you'll effectively never be in range to be double striked, but also the fact that GOku now just has a body that never goes away that will always provide 40k, which is really rough. Then on play, if your leader has Pride Troopers in its special traits, and your opponent's life is at 2 or more, you take 1 damage, then deal 1 damage to your opponent. For what it's worth, the then is also included in that conditional of your leader being a Pride Trooper. So at the moment, if your leader is Jiren and your opponent has 2 or more life, you're able to burn them for 1 and then burn yourself for 1. As a game ender, that is absolutely absurd. The fact that you can force your opponent to 1 no matter what just by playing this card, and then the follow-up is that you're attacking them with a 40k, and then with your leader ability, you're able to draw 2 cards and position yourself in a way to be able to deal the lethal damage is really crazy. This card is absurd, super powerful. Thank God it has 0 combo power, but nevertheless, it's going to be a very frustrating card to deal with, especially considering that you're just gonna have to stare at it. And unless you want to dump a bunch of combo into it, but odds are if you're against red and they're at the energy point where they can drop these big 6 drops like these, you're probably in the end game and you don't have the time to focus on a battle card without worrying about something to come following suit. Moving on over into some Daima stuff, and 2-drop Goku is like stupid good. Just in general, it's all about the numbers. For those of you guys who have been playing since set 1, you guys know how powerful numbers are, and this is Numbers the card. It's a 2-drop 20k with 10k combo. Permanent, if your leader is awakened, this card gets 10k power. during both turns. So this is effectively kind of like the promo Goku we got in set 1, but just like better. Except for the fact that it doesn't, like, it's not a pure Goku in name, which might matter here and there. And then on play, add 1 card from your life to your hand. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a mandatory self-awaken, which does mean in the late game it could be a little bit suspect. But nevertheless, it's a fantastic self-awakener. If you see it in the late game, it's not super dead, especially if you're in a position where you're trying to close out the game, and now having a 2-drop 30k UI Goku will obviously love this, because if you're in a tight pinch, you need to attack multiple times. At least you have a cheap body that can still get your leader up to 30k. The 10k combo means that this card is always live in some fashion. Just incredibly solid, very good card. Moving on over to blue now, and we're jumping right into the extra cards. Which is probably an indication that I don't think any of the battle cards are that phenomenal. I think some of the strategies are interesting. I think there's things that Gohan can do that are neat, but I find that there's a little bit too much restriction with what that strategy wants to really do to really make me feel phenomenal about it right now. But this is what giving myself those extra days of analyzing the meta is really going to help me be able to evaluate the color. But off rip, in terms of analyzing the cards in a vacuum, I think Galactic Donut is a phenomenal card. 3-drop extra card, activate main, draw 2 cards. And the fact that there's no restriction on having 7 cards or less in your hand for this is fantastic. Then choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards, doesn't matter about the cost, and it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Obviously, we know how powerful this kind of effect can be, especially with things like the Para brothers, and they just give you 10k. This can potentially give you not only 20k worth of combo, but it can give you additional bodies. You know, it can get, there's so many things that this can enable in terms of a late game, especially if you're in a position where you're going 1-for-1 against your opponent. In blue mirrors, this could actually be ridiculous, because now you're able to do this, play some body, attack, you get the additional cards to be able to combo and get in some damage. You know, you do this, you combo away, you do a couple of peel off loops. It just puts you in a position where if you're stuck in a 1-for-1 match against your opponent, you can out 1-for-1 them incredibly hard. I like this card a lot, and it's probably going to be one of the best things that the Gohan deck, and in general probably blue decks, are going to be looking to do moving into this next set. Shifting away from blue, unfortunately blue only had the 1 card for me. We do have great a Vegeta for green, and green is going to be extremely powerful. The new archetype in general just dishes out body really strongly, and the fact that now we have a double striker that can also combo is slightly bigger than the other double strikers as well. Obviously 40k is that magic number range you really want to be at. So 6-drop 40k 5k combo double strike on play. Place 1 card from your energy into its owner's drop, which obviously you don't totally mind as the Vegeta player. And then if your leader has Saiyan in its special traits, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with a cost of 5 or less and KO it. This naturally also works with Gohan, which is really neat. So obviously double strikers are some of the most impactful cards in the game, and have probably closed out the most games than any other type of card in the game. So this one just being another one to add into green, which at the moment I think has the most double strikers. I think they have 3 or 4 at the moment. And this one just tacks in really well, especially in the Vegeta strategy, which really loves the energy discard. Moving on over, and Nappa. A lot of green cards on this list. Green is really, really strong, and they have a really, really cool tools. So 3-drop 30k 0 combo on play. Choose 1. Add 1 card from your life to your energy in rest mode. It's kind of nice that it doesn't come from your hand. Obviously, it like self-awakens you a little bit as well. But depending on if you're up against aggro decks, that could be a little tough. But if you're up against aggro decks, you just played a 30k, which means next turn you're in a position to help control the board. Otherwise, if you have no Vegeta battle cards, this card can't attack for the turn. If you don't want to take your life, you don't want to ramp, obviously you can just play him. You just won't be able to attack unless you have a Vegeta on the board, like the 6-drop that we saw previously, which means stronger in the late game if you just want to use him as a 30k beat stick. And obviously he's viable in any other strategies. Androids will probably like it because it gets you closer to being an awakened leader, which is kind of nice, which obviously once you get to 6, you are now a 30k attacker, and then it's just an additional body. We've already been playing 3-drops in the form of like 3-drop trunks to be able to get our ramp on. The fact that this ramp self-awakens and is just a bigger body as well is very much welcome. We lose the combo power, but you know, if you are playing androids, that's not the biggest deal. Moving on over to yellow, and like I said at the beginning of the video, this is going to be our only yellow card. But I like it. I like it quite a lot. 5-drop Vegeta, 35k 0 combo permanent. During your opponent's turn, this card gets 15k power, which pushes it to be a massive 50k body. And then end of your turn for 1. Choose up to 2 of your opponent's rest mode battle cards, and they can't switch to active mode during your opponent's next turn. It's a beefy battle card. It can stun 2 cards. We already know how powerful the ability to stun 2 cards are because of the 4-drop Goku. I like the card a lot. It's tough to talk about yellow because obviously there's a lot of gatekeeper cards in yellow against yellow at the moment in the format, that's hard to speak about the possibility of yellow. But if you're really solid in terms of your Swiss RNG, this is the type of card where you just get value over and over and over. It's hard to get off the board. It's a 5 cost. It's a 50k on your opponent's turn, so red can't deal with it. And you're able to use it turn over turn over turn. And then obviously if you use it with like the Vegeta lead, well, that energy is just free every single time. And the rest of the yellow strategies have ways to get you some free energy to be able to continue utilizing things like this. So the fact that you use it once, if you're in other colors, you're gonna have to find a way to find an energy. In Vegeta, it's just gonna be for free. And the fact that you're able to do this turn over turn over turn while opening up doing other things is really neat. Moving on over to black, and black also has a lot of cards, which I'm happy for. A lot of upgrades. Obviously, the color's only been introduced as of last set, so the fact that they're expanding on the strategy with good, strong cards in this next set is great. We're not going to talk about the baby archetype this video. That's going to be for a future video, but just in general, very solid archetype. Does a lot of really cool things. I love the way that black is like changing up the way to play the game, and with it comes a lot of solid cards. To kick it off, we have 4-drop Great Ape Baby. 30k zero combo. A lot of zero combos we're talking about right now, which is kind of a nice change from like set 2 where like all the best cards in the set were also 10k combos. On play up to 1 battle card with a cost of 2 or less from your hand. I love the fact that we're now giving black ways to be able to play multiple bodies. It is something that has been really tough where if you're a black player playing against red or blue or even green, and you get into a late game position where you're now 1-for-1ing your opponent because you weren't able to stabilize like a board of SS4 secret rares early enough, you end up losing pushing power quite a bit and having to rely on things of just like Bardock and hoping that the 3-drop Bardock super rare can get there. So having a 4 cost that's a sizable body that can also get you another body, which there are some really neat 2-drops that we're able to play as well, is very much welcome. And then when attacking, choose up to 1 battle card with a cost of 3 or less and place it in its owner's combo area. For what it's worth, this effectively is removal. A lot of people find it weird that you can push something into combo before it's their combo step, but effectively if I attack with Baby, and there's a card with 5k combo on the board that's a 3 cost or less, I attack your leader, I combo away that card, I'm attacking with 30k, I leave it at that. That 5k will add on to your leader. So it's like it combos before your combo step. It's like an interesting way to do removal that's not necessarily KOing a card. So just something to keep in mind. You do combo the card, it gets added to your combo total at the end, and it's just kind of like a fancy way to be able to remove cards that don't involve ramping, KOing, what have you. Either way, very solid card, removal, multi-play body. We appreciate that a lot. Then over to Glorio, which is, I think, the only non-SR card that we have on here. No, that's not totally true. We have the red Jiren as well. But nevertheless, this card's great. And this really reflects back to the Daima Goku thing that I was saying, where just like stats are stats. Numbers are good numbers. Here we have Glorio Daima. 4-drop 25k, 10k combo, all really solid numbers. I mean, the 4-drop for 25 kind of looking suspect until you read the permanent. If your opponent has an energy marker, reduce the cost of this card in your hand by 2. Just going over the numbers first. You're now a 2-drop 25k that if you're ever in a really tough position, you got 10k combo. The numbers around that are phenomenal. And then on play, if your opponent has an energy marker, you get to draw a card. So the card also replaces itself. This card existing is really strong because of the way that it warps your opponent plays. Usually at the moment, a lot of ways the energy marker is used is to enable big power plays to push you into your 5 energy plays a turn earlier, or to push for some late game tempo, or mid game tempo even at that. What Glorio effectively says is that if you're going up against a black opponent, you need to consider an inefficient way of using your energy marker because you don't want to enable your opponent to be able to play this out, net a card, get a overstated body as well. So it's just a lot of things that this Glorio is doing in terms of warping the way your opponent plays and forcing them to play inefficiently, which can obviously play into the tempo of black. There is the downside that your opponent, if they're not a black opponent, will only ever have the energy marker once, unless, you know, eventually we get ways to give our opponent energy markers. And so this isn't as effective in like the late game. But again, you're a 10k combo. In the late game, if that's the worst that you are, that's really not that bad. So big fan of Glorio. I like the card a lot in terms of the way that it forces your opponent to have to play the game. Then shifting on over to Trunks GT, and man, the things I would do to have this card have been around for set 3. Trunks GT, 20k, 5k combo, 2 cost black card, permanent. On the opponent's turn, if you have an energy marker, which presumably you're playing this out, you will always have the energy marker, your non-Trunks GT battle cards can't be removed from the battle area by your opponent's skill. So we finally have battle protection for our black cards, which is huge, because if you're able to get rid of the 4-drop SS4, it was really tough for black to be able to do anything. You just kind of hope to be able to dump another one. So the fact that we have some means that's like on curve as well to be able to protect our board is fantastic. Then on play, add up to 1 card from your life to your hand. So really solid for any strategies that want to be awakened. A lot of the black decks do indeed want to be awakened early. So the fact that it does that as well is really nice. So I love this card. Super powerful card in terms of what it enables. Now, if you go first, you net yourself an even if you go second, but you have an energy marker, let's say on turn 2 you play this, you still have your energy marker. Then on turn 3 you play SS4, you swing and you just leave this up, just leave it up. Now they can't deal with your SS4. It's a 30k on turn 3, which isn't the easiest thing to get rid of. You combo, and even if you do have to combo to protect your SS4, you're probably fine with that, because your SS4 replaced the energy marker, that it replaced the card that it had used via its ability, and then next turn you just snowball. So the snowball effect of what black can do is exponentially better now that it has the backing of this card. And worst comes to worst, it's 20k. If you play this in SS4 Goku, you use your energy marker ability, you turn into a 30, 35k. Not the worst. Honestly, big fan of this card, and gives me much more hope for what the SS4 Secret Rare Turbo deck was aiming to do. Then moving on over to our final card, and it is Son Goku Secret Rare. I did not include Vegeta. I think Vegeta is neat, but kind of already does a lot of what Blue already wants to do. And it's just like, it's fine. I don't think it's warping anything. It might not be the case. It might be better than I think it is, but honestly, I think it's fine. 6-drop 40k 0 combo Son Goku with the Universe 7 tag, which does matter for synergies on play. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, negate the next damage you take. Super powerful ability, especially if you know your opponent's going to be aiming to go for you with a massive double striker. You know that if you protect, like your opponent has an empty board, which is very likely because of the when attacking ability we're about to talk to in a second. Your opponent has an empty board. They need to go for game. They only have a double striker. They swing with lead. You know that you can out combo successfully, knowing that you won't be able to take the damage the next turn afterwards, which is extremely powerful. It just forces your opponent to have to play in a way that's really awkward, which I love doing, if you guys haven't clued into that yet. So the fact that we can force our opponent into really weird plays, the fact that it's 40k, if we're playing UI Goku, it means that now we have a 40k attacker on our leader as well. With the additional, when attacking, choose all of your opponent's battle cards and they get minus 20k power for the turn. Really solid board wipe, turn after turn over turn. Helps you clean up board, especially specifically if you're playing UI Goku, because a lot of the ways that you're going to be able to beat UI Goku is by going wide. If you're trying to like just big body Goku, it's kind of probably not going to get you there, because he's always a free like 25k, 30k, 40k leader based on the battle cards he's playing. So you're going to go wide. And the fact that if UI Goku can get to a point where you're just dropping this, not only you're protecting your leader at least once, minimum once, but you're also cleaning up the board, which is a really big deal. That said though, can we just like take a moment to talk about the fact that like these are the same, like this looks exactly the same. Here's the thing. If you guys don't know the differences between the alt arts, the left one at the moment is the regular alt art, and then the right one is the God Rare. Not my favorite, because obviously this is very reminiscent of the set 1 God Rare. Don't love that it's the same art, and it's not super distinguishable, but the transparency is a little bit less on the God Rare. If you can see on the bottom of the card, it's a little bit more purple. It's because you don't have the trim of the framing there. And then if you look at the foiling, not only is the foiling also included around the 6 and the energy dots and all the trims around all the text, so it's that added foil on top of that. But the gold stamp foiling has some additional shattered foiling on it. So if you guys ever see the two cards, one, look at the stars in the bottom right corner. That'll indicate what rarity it is. But if you guys want to know what the difference is in terms of the printing of the card, those are the biggest differences. I wish personally, I want us to go back to having different arts, but like, fine. With that said though, that is our coverage of the top 10 cards in FB04 Ultra Limit. I'm super excited to jump into this meta, especially with the way that the different decks are showing new ways to play the game. Obviously black does that the best, so I'm super excited for all the baby stuff and kind of reintroducing into GT Goku and seeing what we can do there. Although it does feel like a lot of decks are very much like, here are cards that are really hard to answer and gonna force the game to close early. So not as much interaction in the set as I would want, but we're slowly getting there more and more. With things like Baby being able to combo on board in like rest mode, means that there's a little bit of trying to game your opponent there. So little baby steps towards what I hope is the utopic version of this game to come over the next couple sets. But nevertheless, I'm very excited for Ultra Limit. With that said though, let me know what your favorite card is in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys on our next one.